All right, so
Okay.
yes, we can start. So hi everyone. So I'm Wei Ling and I run Dialect Classrooms, which I know you guys have been learners of our classes. We give free dialect classes every month in various dialects: Cantonese, Hokkien, Teochew, etc. Full range on our platform or on our Facebook. All right, and today we have a very special guest, Elisabela, or Bella for short, and she'll tell us what is Patuá, what makes it so special, and why does she want to advocate for the use of Patuá? So Bella, please.
Yes, first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk about Patuá and share the little knowledge that I know about this language, because actually I'm not a linguist, nor am I a Patuá speaker. But I would rather say I'm a Patuá enthusiast, because I remember when I first listened to Patuá was through a Creole theater, the Dosi Papiasang di Macau, which performs with the Creole dialect, with our language of Macau. We call it Dosi Papiasang, sweet language of Macau. So Patuá has various names. I've heard that, of course, many would say that Patuá is actually a sister language of Kristang, because of the history behind it. I'm sure some of you might know that when the Dutch took over Melaka, a lot of Portuguese descendants, actually, they had to find another place. And many of them have settled in Macau. As such, the Eurasian community or the Creole community stayed in Macau for quite some generations. And thus, this language obtained its own originality, with incorporating with different kinds of Cantonese, being influenced with Cantonese, or later in the late 19th century, even English, because of the influence of British Hong Kong at the time. So actually, Patuá is known as Lingua Maquista, the language of the Macanese, or Lingua de Macau, the language of Macau. In Chinese, on Cantonese, we say Tou Sang Tou Yu, Tu Sang Tu Yu. Also, we call it O Mun Yu, the language of Macau, Lingua de Macau. So actually, Patuá went through different phases of changes and evolution. If we look at the documentations of early Patuá letters that was actually registered by Marques Pereira in the late 19th century, the writing or the orthography is more the vocabulary use and so on is quite similar to that of Kristang. But the modernized Patuá is more with its own original writings and so on. So we can see a development. And also, for example, with the Patuá, we also know that it's not only incorporating with Kristang, also with Cantonese and even Spanish because of the influence of Philippines. This is all have to do with the rich community in Macau, the Creole community, the Eurasians we call Macanese, or a Maquista, as we call this. That's a brief, I don't know if you have an idea of what Patuá is by a very brief introduction of this language.
Yeah. So I think we can see the Patuá words on your
Yes.
background. I can see some, like Portuguese on there. Unga, dos, tres, cuatro.
Yes. Actually, this is Patuá. Unga, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco. And you can see the similarity of, because it's a Portuguese-based Creole. So we do have, for example, if you can see coração, it's similar to the Portuguese coração, which is heart, meaning the heart. So this, you can see the similarity of this language. But also you can see if you, one of the words, this side, the amojai. If you can see the influence of Cantonese in the Patuá language, for example, amor means love in Portuguese. Jai, if you use the Cantonese, jai is like a small thing, or when you try to express closeness, and so we call it like amojai is like darling. So we can see the two kind of language incorporating together and develop a very unique dialect of its own.
What other words might there be a combination of Cantonese and Portuguese?
Actually, there are quite a number of words. And for example, even if we say lao zai means gok lao, means attic. So this kind of words are also borrowed, or for example, cha bong qi bong. Cha bong qi bong. Why don't you try to guess what is cha bong qi bong? It comes from sound, a kind of sound.
Flying?
Cantonese opera.
Oh.
Because it's like the sounds of those musicals and so on, and because it's also borrowed from Cantonese called cha dok chang. Cha dok chang is also an expression of Cantonese opera. So these kind of words you can find, and you can see the uniqueness of this language because it is influenced by the locality of Macau. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So, so you said that there was a influence of the Spanish because of the Filipinos who were coming. So, what words might there be where you use the?
For example, if you can see the yo, if it's in Portuguese, actually we call it eu. So the Spanish is yo, and this is quite similar to this. But of course, this is in debate. Some people say that the more archaic Portuguese, the pronunciation is different from the modern Portuguese. So it might also be an influence for Portuguese. But there are traces of Spanish words in Patuá as well. It's similar to the Cristão, which we also can find some similar words on that. Yeah.
I see. That's really cool. Yeah, I think that's so interesting to see, how you just assimilate like additional like languages into the existing language of the land. Because even in Singapore as well, when we have, let's say, Hokkien, we infuse it with like Malay words. So when I talk to my Taiwanese friend, they actually couldn't understand what I was speaking because for them, they actually infuse some Japanese words into their vocabulary. So, and then with the China ones, it's a more pure strain of like Hokkien or Fujian, where it's actually originates from. So I'm just curious, what is the background of any like cultural groups that actually use Patuá? Like maybe traditionally and modern days, because I know there's only 50 speakers left, which is Patuá.
Actually, Patuá was a daily conversational language of the Macanese community in Macau, especially in the 18th century or in the 19th century, and even it has been for 300 years. It began to decline with the change of policy and also environmental and administrative measures. In the early 20th century, it began to decline. It is classified by UNESCO as a critically endangered language, which is the next level would be extinct, as you might know. So it is critically endangered because according to UNESCO, the measurement, the speakers are the grandparents, the youngest speaker are the grandparents, and they actually don't really speak it fluently or daily. They might know the language, but they don't really use it as daily conversation unless maybe jokingly or as a cultural marker, cultural identity marker at home with friends. But in the daily lives, you don't use this language to in restaurants or in supermarkets, right? So this is really obstacles in terms of preservation of a language. It actually went to decline because the Portuguese administration at the time wanted to implement standard Portuguese language in their Creole communities. So as such, the Patuá was actually you couldn't speak Patuá in schools. You will be fined. And also another influencing factor would be the market value or the language investment. If you want to seek for a better job opportunity, you had to speak the standard Portuguese. As such, the parents at the time, they didn't want their children to speak the Creole dialect, which will influence their pronunciation or their proficiency in Portuguese language. These all are certain factors that led to the decline. Also because of its social, it represents, how do I put it? It's more like it's regarded as a broken language, broken Portuguese. Those who spoke Patuá was regarded as uneducated. They didn't know how to speak the language. Interestingly, actually, it's not only a way of thinking in the old days. I remember because I made these kind of Patuá flashcards. So I went to visit a friend of mine at her home, and I gave her a packet of the flashcards I made. And her mother immediately said, oh, she was really happy when she had those flashcards. She said, well, my grandmother actually spoke this language. She spoke perfect Patuá. And the father, around 70 years old, he immediately said, no, she didn't speak perfect Patuá. She just spoke poor Portuguese. So in this sense, you will know that even in the modern times, some people still regard it as broken Portuguese. However, luckily, nowadays, we know that actually culture is should not really be given a social class. You know what I mean? We appreciate different kind of culture. As such, we also appreciate the different kind of language, Creole dialect, and so on. So more and more people are concerned to the preservation of language. And hopefully we might change the mentality of people regarding this sweet language of Macau. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, because I think in a lot of for a lot of our learners, we also face the same thing. Like if we speak a certain dialect, people just assume that you're from a lower, like socio-economical class. And in Singapore, we also have a policy called the Speak Mandarin campaign, where they encourage you to speak Mandarin, and they do this by, I think they find you, and they also stop the broadcasting of a lot of dialect programs. That is pretty radical, I feel, because like my grandparents, they probably don't speak Mandarin like until they are forced, you know, to learn a completely like different language. And there's still some debates whether Cantonese, Teochew, Hainanese, are these really dialects, or is this a separate class of language? It's very political, you know, people will argue like all the time, you know, like you shouldn't call it dialect classrooms, you know, it should be like language classrooms and stuff. So it's very interesting to see how policy have actually such a long-lasting effect, you know, on our culture, on the variety of entertainment media that we enjoy today. And I'm pretty sure learners, you guys can share after this, how is it like in your country, in Malaysia, in the United States, how is it like? Okay, so I just want to move on to the next part. Okay, so why do you get into being like this advocate for Putua?
Actually, it all started 20 years ago. 20 years ago, when my mother told me, well, she brought me to a show, a Creole theater show, Patuá theater show. I still remember when I went to the show, I was like, I don't understand this language. What am I going to why am I going to waste my time? And I remember she said, this is our language. We were once forced to give up Patuá. Now we have to learn our own language again. And even if you don't speak it, you need to know about it because it has to do with our cultural identity. So I went, and then I went every year, and it has become a ritual for many Macanese. And I also would like to really give my gratitude to the Creole theater group, Doce Papiasang di Macau, because without them, I don't think I would be able to listen to this language at all. Because my parents, my mother don't speak the language. She heard it from her grandmother. My grandfather doesn't speak the language. Well, we use that phrases or really short sentences, but it's not like we use the language as a conversational tool. So we didn't speak Patuá at home. We spoke a few words. We used a few words. And because of the theater, the language was kept alive, if you may say so, because it helps people really listen to conversations. I mean, it's not, it's different from really reading literary text, you know, because they use they use Patuá to converse, even with simple like "Gustavo, are you okay? Are you fine? How are you?" and so on. So it's a way for people to really experience and to listen to conversations in the language. And then, well, it was an honor, and I was lucky enough to be able to join the group in the backstage and help out. And it was then that I started to really appreciate the hard work of the seniors, and also they are trying to invite younger participants, because this is a way to inherit our culture. And the hard work by our director of the group, Miguel de Sena Fernandes, who did this for nearly 3 decades every year. It's not at all an easy task. But I think it's an important task in order for people to be aware and appreciate this language of ours. And this is also why I started to, actually I did my my doctorate thesis on Patuá theater, because documentation is important. We need to document everything about our culture in order for future generations really to learn and know about it. So this is gradually I grew fond of the language because it's fun, it's cute, it's a really a jolly kind of language, and that's why I fell in love with Patuá.
Are there any people your age who are speakers of Patuá? Like maybe not just the few phrases, but they can actually do a decent conversation in Patuá?
I would say that for a short conversation, there are a few, because they many of some of the younger generation, they learn it through the Creole theater because they participated. Because with Creole theater, you have to memorize the sentences, the lines. You have to understand what you are speaking. But of course, to carry a fluent or a really long conversation, you also need a lot of vocabularies. The problem with Patuá is that it didn't advance with time. And also we have to understand those that really spoke Patuá in the last century are those, as we say, uneducated people. I wouldn't like to put it that way, but what I mean is what when they use Patuá to converse, it's not about academic topics. It's not about being you won't use Patuá in court as a lawyer, right? It mainly is a home language. You spoke it at home. You talk about the neighborhood happenings and so on. So the language is actually, if you may say, the language, the vocabulary is not that big, in the sense that you can use it and carry into a very in-depth conversation, or a kind of really, how would I put it? It's more like a casual kind of talk, if you may say so. So and about the fluent speakers, frankly, you have to really use the language every day when you go out. We are a small group of Patuá lovers, if you may say so. Audience, they try. I have seen a lot of increase in the use of Patuá in social media, for example, Facebook, or even in WhatsApp within groups. But we use just a few sentences. We don't really, I won't be talking in Patuá in like 30 minutes or in this kind of conversations. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what does it mean when a language is critically endangered? Like not just less people speaking it, but the impact it has on society, on the relations between people. What does it mean to you for a language to be critically endangered?
Well, a language to be critically endangered is a language that you don't really use every day. That's for me, I mean the personal. Of course, the official standard would be that the youngest speaker are the grandparents, and they use it partially and not really every day. For a language to be critically endangered, because the importance and why do we preserve a language is because it carries a lot of cultural memories, and also it helps us understand our own cultural identity, our way of thinking, and so on. So if a language is extinct, part of the cultural identity would also die out. That's why I think it is important to preserve, because we really want to pass on our cultural identity to the next generation.
Yeah, cool. And what are some of the things that is being done in Macau to revive Patuá? You mentioned about the theater. Are there other movements that's going on?
Well, the theater is actually one of the very important movement of this Patuá preservation. Even in Patuá theater, the group have expanded it beyond the theater stage. They made multimedia short films every year, because if you can put these kind of entertaining short films on the YouTube, for example, on the internet, we won't have the geographical and also the time limit of how this language is transmitted to the audience. Most of if not all, the short films are actually a comedy, because Patuá theater is performed with comedy, and also because of it is a kind of a tool for the mechanics to enjoy and express and voice out their thoughts. So even if the videos are entertaining, the director, Sergio Pérez, actually works closely. They work together with the theater to make these kind of short films. And this is a great way, actually, because they have subtitles. For example, people talk in Patuá, and they have subtitles in various languages, Chinese, Portuguese, English, or even Patuá, and people can actually learn from it. It's a demonstration of how conversations are done. And also there have been Patuá classes. However, also I think it is very important that the administration, the Macau administration, and also they have enlisted Patuá theater.
Let me just mute. Sorry, I'll just mute the person. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Please continue.
Actually, they have incorporated and enlisted the Patuá theater as a Macau intangible heritage. And just last year, it is enlisted into national cultural intangible heritage. I think this is very important, and policy-wise, it's very important, because first of all, it's a recognition of this culture as part of Macau's culture, and also because it raises awareness of different people that they appreciate. They would. I have Chinese friends from Macau that actually are very interested, and they have begun to participate, or even they even would already be informed. They would want to know when will be the next Patuá theater show. Everyone is actually appreciating the culture and even appreciating the language. And I think this is an important movement in this aspect, because when I forgot to mention, actually, the Patuá Theater is part of the Macau's Arts Festival. So every year, it's like a guarantee that you will have one show. It also pushes people to work, to try to present one show every year. So this helps with the continuance of the language itself. Yeah.
Is it only theater? Are there, like, I don't know, dramas or like movies in Patuá?
Yes, what I mentioned actually just now, the short films, they are movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they well, short films, you may say, because they of the time span. Because Patuá theater in the past is only theater, but now it's more like a spectacle. You have short films incorporated as part of the performance, but it extends further because they are uploaded on the internet, and so they all mostly range from 3 minutes to maybe 10 minutes. And there are also music video made on Patuá songs, well-known Patuá songs. So it's a great way. It's a great way to extend this language further.
Yeah. So besides being in Macau, do you think that there's any Patuá community outside of Macau?
Yes. Actually, even I remember because around the world, there are Casas de Macau. Casas de Macau, it's a community or an association of the Macanese in different places, like Portugal, Brazil, Vancouver, Australia, and so on. So actually, I remember watching on YouTube, someone uploaded on it that they also did a short recita, as we would call it. The recita means short Patuá theater performance. So they do it like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Actually, in the past, Patuá theater were performed in short sketches, as we call it. But now it has been developed into an hour or an hour and a half drama or theater, it would call it. So yeah, actually there are, but like I said, I think the main challenges would be to attract youngsters to really learn and try to do it. Why I stress with the theater is actually, I think it's a great move by the director Miguel for inviting younger people to participate. They might not really speak the language as many would say, genuine Patuá language with the perfect, genuine pronunciation. They might need to learn or try to enforce, because many of the younger generation, they don't have the opportunity to listen to genuine Patuá. So in this case, it is challenging, but really appreciate, because it's not easy to do a performance. We all are amateurs. They are not amateurs in the sense that they don't really do theater for a living. So many really did it for the sake of preserving the culture and sharing the culture. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah. And what do you think is the strongest reason that we should prevent like a language from going extinct? Like some people felt that, you know, like it's okay to just let them die out, you know, like since it's not practical. But, you know, I'm sure that when we advocate for language, it's always more emotional. So also, what do you think are some reasons that you strongly urge people to start learning their own dialects, you know?
I think one of the reasons, for example, I think a characteristic of Patuá is actually it's a sweet language, as it's known. Dosi papiasang. It's a sweet language. Why is it sweet? Because it's when you speak it, you speak it lovingly, and you speak it with a jolly spirit. And I think this is actually reflects the Macanese own jolly and a positive way to see things. Even in difficult times, they will joke around. And I think the language itself is a great way to transmit this kind of thought and thinking and point of view of life of the Macanese. That's why we need this language to express that cultural identity and express that way of life we have passed on generation to generation. Yeah.
Cool. So after listening to Bella, anyone thinks that they want to try learning Patuá, you guys can react with a thumbs up. Okay, I think no one. Maybe they're just learning about it. I think what are some resources, you know, if you're not in Macau, like how can people actually learn Patuá?
Well, one of the sources would be to go on YouTube and try to type Dosi Patiasan di Macau, where you can find short videos of their performances. And also I personally have made a Facebook page, Untinho de Língua Maquista, where I share these kind of Patuá flashcards. It's actually been translated to Portuguese, English, and Chinese so that it can reach a broader audience. Of course, for me personally, to really learn a language and to be fluent about it isn't easy. But comparatively, actually, Patuá is easier than Portuguese, personally, from a personal point of view, because, for example, their grammar. If we might say the grammar, we say eu tenho, tu tens, eu tenho, tu tens, ele tem, and so on. But in Patuá, it's eu tenho, ele tem, você tem. It's all the same. We don't need to change. So actually, it's simpler. And even the plural form. For example, you can see from this side. The filo. Usually, it's with the repeatable form. It's already the plural form. So it's actually comparatively easier to do that. And I think it's interestingly, I had an experience when I was in Singapore. They had a Kristang festival. So I brought these flashcards and I showed it to the children. They have a bunch of children from Melaka, and they were able to read all the content, and we were able to understand each other. When they spoke Kristang and I spoke a few Patuá words, and we were able to converse. A short conversation. It was really, really interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. All right. So I guess now I can pretty much open up the floor to people who have any questions.
I just have a question. So does Patuá have any intonations or something like the Mandarin or Cantonese or something like that?
Sorry.
Does Patuá have any intonations or accent marks those, something to Mandarin or to Cantonese and so on?
You mean words or the pronunciation, like Cantonese?
Like Mandarin, there are 4 tones, right? So does Patuá have something similar as well?
No, actually, Patuá, we are trying to work on because Patuá is a colloquial language, and so there is a lack of orthography or really rearrangement of the language itself. For example, when we read Patuá, you will realize that there are different kind of writing. I mean, even for the same word, the alphabet, the writing is different, how it is written, because many people actually they wrote it according to how they feel it sounded, even in the letters, in the old letters and so on. So we don't have that, but actually there is plan on trying to do a reformation of the language. The first standardization that was done was by Ade, who actually wrote a lot of Patuá literature. For example, I have a book of his here. For example, well, here. For example, can't see? Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. Anyway, Macau de Tiempo Antiguo, Macau in the old times. He actually wrote a lot of Patuá, and this actually was a first standardization done because it's written down. And for example, in certain verb, in the end of the word, they try to use a circumflex to indicate it's a verb, and also the pronunciation. And then there are other studies, recent study, because actually this writer passed away in 1993, which is actually the same year when the Creole Theatre Group was established. And later on, actually, there are also other standardization or vocabulary work that was done by a linguist, Maquista Chapado, by a linguist, and also by Miguel, the theater director and scriptwriter. And however, the difference in writing actually, the difference in writing and also the non-advancement of the language itself actually limit the way how it can be learned, because you don't have a guideline like Cantonese or like Mandarin Pinyin. That's the difficulty, yeah.
Oh, okay. So that means Patua is like more regional to Macau, but like not to like Melaka, is it?
Yes, yes. It's actually you can. It's what we might say. It's like Cantonese and Mandarin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are similarity, but there are the big difference as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well.
Anyone has any other questions? So I see that Keith has wrote that he's interested in studying Patua.
Great. It's a great news.
Is there anything you'd like to share? Okay, I think
Hi. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, because hi, I was saying because I missed the beginning of your talk. So I came in about so I kind of missed the beginning. I was just saying that, yeah, because I'm from Hong Kong, so I speak Hong Kong Cantonese. I've visited Macau a few times, and I also I know I feel a romance like this. Portuguese is one. I learned mainly Brazilian Portuguese, but I'm also interested in a European a Portuguese, and the fact that there is a real Creole that's so close to Hong Kong, that's really quite fascinating to me. And I do research in Creole formation. So I'm just wondering, because I'm not knowing anything about the Patuá, although you've told us a few things about Patuá today. I'm just interested in how Patuá was formed, what its grammatical properties are, and how it, and just what it takes from both Cantonese and European Portuguese, because you've said that Patuá has a simplified grammar compared to the Portuguese, so it doesn't inflect for person anymore. Just as yo ten, tu ten, ele ten, etc.
Yeah.
So the Portuguese seem to be the lexifier for Patuá, but Patuá hasn't retained the grammatical aspects of Portuguese. Yeah.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But what about Cantonese? So what does Patuá take from Cantonese?
Patuá takes on Cantonese, I think, also in maybe some form of like words. For example, if we say po choi, actually Patuá would say po choi in written in Patuá, in like Portuguese accent and so on. So actually it's quite similar in that same. And also because I think it's not just because just now I also explained how it's influenced locally Cantonese, but I think it also has a great influence from the media from Hong Kong, because in the late 1960s and so on, the people started to listen to radio, English radio or Cantonese radio, and started with that. It actually Cantonese became part of Macanese. It became an influential or even one of the conversational language of the Macanese community. This leads to what I said just now, because I don't know from which point you started to listen to the explanation. And so it became little by little, it went to a inclination. But coming back to actually from Hong Kong, actually there were speakers, Patuá speakers in Hong Kong in the past. And actually even some words, for example, tiro grande. Tiro grande, tiro means shot, grande means big. It means big shot. So this influence, from, yes, tiro grande, it really shows the influence from. That's why in Hong Kong they also have their we call it Matamoro Patuá, which is a type of Patuá that are spoken from the Macanese community in Hong Kong. But of course, I'm talking about quite a decade or 50 or 60 years ago. I'm talking a long time ago, more than 50 years. I'm sorry. It might have been in the 1940s, 1930s, and even 1950s, so on, because there was a diaspora of the Macanese to various places, and the immigration of Macanese to Hong Kong also brought the language alongside to Hong Kong. So there had been a community, but what I'm talking is a community of the speakers would be in their 80s or 90s, or even, I don't know where they would have they are, but then the older generation, I may say, they spoke Patuá, or they were aware, they know about this language. But of course, as I have explained earlier, because of their daily necessities, they wouldn't speak Patuá in a supermarket or restaurant. So it ceased to exist, and also because of immigration and so on. So I'm not sure if now you have any Patuá speakers in Hong Kong. That would be interesting investigation.
Muito obrigado.
De nada.
Right. Do we have any other questions on the floor? How about Lynn? You recently concluded your whole year festival to promote the Cantonese culture. Do you want to share a bit more? Maybe Bella, you could tell the Patuá community how festivals are done to promote other languages.
Thank you for sharing. Can you hear me? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I like how you share about using play, using arts as a way to ignite this or even continue the language, inspire the youth to do that. I learned a lot. Thank you for sharing. It will actually also inspire me to sort of work more with like arts related organizations to also revive Cantonese in that sense. So I guess the way I did it in Singapore is more of using food as an angle to revive lesser known stories, because I guess in Singapore, being a very small country, we sort of homogenize. That was like the strategy to bring the nation together in a short span of time. But of course, along the way, there'll be sacrifices. And I think our generation, we're playing catch up, because a lot of what I'm trying to do is I have to rely on seniors who are like 80 or 90 years old to seek their memories, because a lot of those foods would not be found anywhere else, only in their own homes. So sometimes some of the dishes, they themselves might not have cooked it for 20, 30 years, because the term of the food, the dish, is not even mentioned. Like the word is not even uttered. It's only when we do more research, we delve into it more, we start asking, oh, so do you have this in the past? Then they start thinking, oh, yes, we do. Let me show you. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I would love to follow how you also revive this language is endangered. And I mean, even though I'm Cantonese, but I cannot speak Cantonese. So I'm also trying to learn, like play catch up and try to revive in other ways, and along the way learn the language. Yeah, so thanks for sharing.
Thank you. It's actually very exciting to listen to different people, how they work. And like Lingui just now said, that it's more emotional preservation. When we preservation, it's more emotional about love of our own culture and community. And I think a good way to also to do it might be to continue with songs. Just now I forgot to mention, actually, there is another group, another way of preservation of Patuá is Tuna Mackenzie. We have a band that actually perform Patuá songs. Of course, again, I think it's important to really invite younger generation, but also they have their own character in performing, because when you listen to the musicals and the tones and so on, it has a mixture of Portugueseness and locality and so on. So when they perform and sing in Patuá, people can actually, at least for a few words, they can follow the words. And I think that is a really great way also, because it's easily done with, for example, when in restaurants and so on, they sometimes will perform in parties or Christmas gatherings. And so this is a great way also to preserve the language. And also just now you mentioned about food, right? Actually, we have our own Macanese gastronomy as well. And it is enlisted as a national intangible heritage too. So many people are actually working towards to revive this. It's, of course, some younger Macanese, they do know how to make Macanese dishes. But also because Macanese dishes, there are a great variety of Macanese dishes. And in the past, it's usually passed on from within home. You won't give the recipe to other people. It's my own recipe. But now people have a different mentality, because if you really need to pass on to generations, if your own children will make it, you need to share to those that are interested. So there are a lot of books. So this is also a great way. A lot of books trying to, people are publishing books, so they share the recipe out. And but because the Macanese gastronomy, it's a slow cooked food. Many are slow cooked food. This also faces a obstacle. I'm sure that, yes, some people are interested in cooking, but the rapid pace of our everyday life also makes a difference, and also hinders how people are really trying to preserve their culture through gastronomy. Yeah.
Mm. I think Lynn had like this segment where they teach you how to cook, was it? Sorry, I didn't attend that one. And then there was a few where they invited people to try Tosanese cuisine. Was that right, Lynn?
So I guess for the case in Singapore is that what I'm trying to save or sort of revive is a community called like clan associations. It's like the embassy of the diaspora. But now people start to ask or start questioning about the relevance today, because a lot of the roles are taken up by the government. So in the sense how I structure the programs is that I'll have more in-depth cooking sessions whereby the senior in the clan associations will interact with the youths, with the youths who are from the clan association, because the idea is about succession. Because if say I open up the workshop to anyone else, then it doesn't really help in terms of the efforts to succeed. Ensure that there's longevity of the clans. Yeah, so there's some kind of prioritization that we do. So in terms of cooking, that one is really for future clan leaders whom I'm trying to nurture. But of course, we also work with restaurants to hopefully they become something public can also find, because I think what we really need is commercial support as well. I think once if it has this demand, and then that's the supply. So I totally agree with what Bella shared in terms of like, does the language has the value in a sense to bring in, like, is that the ROI? If I spend the time to learn the language, does it give me the rewards? So I think it's the same for in terms of like food. I think especially like slow food is definitely a huge challenge. But how can we then sort of, because I think there's money out there so it's more of like how can we market it? Sometimes I think it's more of how do we repackage it to hopefully, I mean it's still a journey, so I'm still at the very like beginning of it. let's see what will happen like 10, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, I agree with commercializing because, of course, there are debates, because when you do it commercially, the food tastes different. It usually tastes different. Yeah. There are criticism when people try to change how it's presented, because, for example, the Macanese gastronomy is more like a home cooking food, so it usually is served in a big pot or so on. But in restaurants like fine dining, you won't have a big pot in the middle of the table. So when these changes occur, there are debates. But without commercializing, you can't reach a broader audience. Of course, we need to do it within the community, but also we have to broaden ourselves. I think policy is also important, because once, for example, the Macanese gastronomy has entered the Macau intangible heritage and now to the national intangible heritage, we can find more Macanese food on the streets. Actually, there are more restaurants that advertise they have Macanese food. Whether it's really the genuine taste, again, we leave it aside to that debate, but then at least more people are interested in knowing. When they know about the food, they would like to know more about the community and how it came to be. So it's also an extension, like Lynn just now said, and you will link to the language. What's the name of the food and so on. So I think I really do hope that you will succeed, because it's really important and it's not easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, yours too. It's not easy to save a language. So yes, let's do it together.
Yeah, I think we have this joke that when for Asian people, when we praise someone's home cooked food as being good, we say, "Whoa, you can open a restaurant." And when we praise a restaurant, it will be like, "Oh, it tastes just like home cooked food."
True.
Yeah, right. So we have another question that asks if there's any examples of successful revival of endangered languages. And Teddy talked about, I don't know how to pronounce that, Romance Christian. Okay, maybe Teddy, you can talk about it later. But I think there are languages like Christang. It was revived in Singapore. I think at one point they had only 10,000 fluent speakers, I think. And then now there's more because they are having this annual Christam festival. And I think for Baba Malay, actually, because after this drama series called The Little Nonya, so just your 1930s stories about a typical family shows where there's lots of backstabbing, a lot of abuse and drama, and then people just get so emotionally invested. I remember they had a meet and greet at this shopping mall in Singapore, and there were so many people that they were filling out, the first story, the second, third, fourth of the atrium, and some of the floors actually cracked. I think there were like way too many people, and then people started getting interested in the Peranakan culture, like the food, your babi ponte, and the language, the clothes, your kebaya, and it's just so amazing. Of course, there's some culture where it's being kind of like misrepresented, because they're like, oh, is it the matriarch is always like the cruel one, the nasty one, and oh, is there like lots of backstabbing in like household? But hey, you get that like everywhere, like in all your dramas. But at least it's like what you say, it makes people interested to know more about the culture. So now people realize that there are such things as Nonya and Peranakan. Before that, I don't think we really hear of that term anywhere, unless you go to specialty shops. And then people dug up and then they found that Lee Kuan Yew, the ex-Prime Minister of Singapore, is actually Peranakan. But he had to, I guess, in a way, hide the fact that he's Peranakan so that he can appeal to, I guess, a more populist vote, by presenting himself as a more pure Chinese. So for those who don't know, Peranakans, they are a mix of the native, they are the descendants of the natives of Singapore and Malaysia. I guess in Indonesia, there are some, and usually it's the intermarriage of Chinese and the locals. Locals, I think it's more of the Malay ethnic group. So they adopted a lot of the culture, like maybe the religion of the Chinese styles, some of the language, maybe the way they eat, you know, the cutleries and stuff. So it's very interesting. So I see Patua is also the marrying of like Cantonese and, you know, Portuguese, and then not just in language, but maybe certain way of life, maybe, I don't know, for your food culture, maybe certain rituals, like, I don't know, maybe just curious, like maybe for a wedding, like a traditional wedding in Macau, because this is also one thing that divides the different dialect groups in Singapore. I know, like certain gifts you must present as a betrothed gift. So is there such things in the Patuá culture?
Actually, in Macanese, for example, if they, if you want to look at a typical Macanese wedding, for example, you will find we have.
Oops, does it hang? Okay. Let's just wait for a while.
Cake being wrapped with a white paper and with a small bowl, and it placed in individual plates. I mean, with a wedding, when you go, everyone can take one piece. And also there are other cultural, which is actually interesting, is the wedding dolls. We call it wedding dolls. But I remember when I was really young, when I had my first communion, and then we had the party, there are all kind of dolls there made by our aunties or grandmothers. They made these dolls, and wedding dolls are, for example, each table they would put one doll, or now they have a table putting different kind of dolls. They make it with similar to Barbie dolls, but then they make their own wedding dress, which is really beautiful. But it's also a dying out kind of culture, because those that really make it, there's very few people make it. So this kind of ritual is actually a great way to showcase, because actually in the past, because the Macanese women are at home, so they also even decorate. We have one kind of food festival called not food festival. It's a way of, it's called chá gordo, which is translated to fat tea. It's actually an afternoon tea that extends to the early evening, and you have all kinds of snacks, a big table. It's like a buffet. So you have all kinds of Macanese snacks and food, and they have decorations, because in the past women are usually at home, so they have time to make it. And nowadays it's quite rare. Some people make it, or with events and so on. They make the chá gordo. It's a great way for the people of the community gather together, big families, or now with sometimes during Christmas they make a chá gordo, so that everyone can survive the Macanese gastronomy and people can gather together. It's also some kind of a great way for people to get. I don't know why I started mentioning chá gordo, but anyway, it's part of the Macanese culture. Yeah.
Cool, that's quite cool. Yeah. So yes, Teddy, I know Teddy also has great interest in linguistics. Maybe Teddy can share a bit about your thoughts, and maybe also the revived dialects that you mentioned.
Yeah, I actually have known about Patua long before I know dialect classroom, because first I speak Portuguese, and then second I'm interested in Creole. And I also know Miguel Fernandez. I had talked with him for a while about Patua a long time ago. And I don't know, I just think it's very interesting to to find European language-based languages in Asia. Like if we talk about Portuguese, in 5 continents of this world have countries that use Portuguese as their languages. And like in Asia, there will be Macau, but the Patua, representing Macau, and Timor-Leste, which is inside Indonesia. There used to be Indonesia province. Yeah, so and also in Singapore, the Kristang and in Melaka. Yeah. Yeah, so I just think it's very interesting. But it's very pity that there's not much resource about this language. Yeah. And about the theater, I think that's a very good initiative to have something real that people can experience this language. But I think it would be better if anybody can make the learning materials like phrase books. Yeah.
Let's go. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. And how about Kai Yang? I know you also have great interest in language.
Okay, I suppose so. I think if I remember correctly, the first time I heard about Patua was like through Kristan. So I was looking into that for some time before. And when I stumbled upon this, I found it quite interesting. And same with Teddy as well, in the sense that I'm interested in Creole and Pidgin languages. So I decided to look into it. I think I remember looking through resources before as I dig through it. And mostly it was like Elisabela's resources popped out, like the YouTube channel and the WordPress. Yeah, normally it would be your material, so you're really pumping out there. But there's something interesting that I really like is that the Macanese Library actually has like a dictionary out there, like an online one that you can go through, assuming that there's no phrase books yet. I mean, there are books about it, but yeah, it's hard to access at the moment. So you can always get through that. In any case, this was a night. I really enjoyed the talk that you gave. It's really interesting, all the cultures that parallel, like the Eurasians here in Melaka. There's a lot of parallels because of the historical connections that they used to have with them.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Maria.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Does anyone else have any other things you want to chip in? I don't know, NG, CD.
Sorry. Before we finish, can I just ask something? Yes. How do we keep in touch with you? So, if you want to, ask you questions about Patois or Portuguese or Macau, how can we keep in touch with you?
Facebook. Just type my name, Elisabela Larrea. You can add me.
Oh yeah. So what's your full name? It's Elisabela
Larrea.
What's your last name?
I'll type it out now.
Please, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Okay. Yeah, I can see that Keith is very passionate about languages.
That's great.
Yeah.
We need that passion to keep it moving, to keep it going. Yeah, true.
Cool. Right. So I'd just like to check, Bella, do you think that there is a way that, dialect classrooms can help with, the revival of Patuá? Because we are conceived as a platform where anyone can actually come in and, use the resources that we provide, like the platform, organizing of class, like for example, for Lynn, she just come on and, promote her whole year festival, because we want to be like this place where people who feel strongly for language can just come in without too much like difficulties, not like, oh, you have to write a form for sponsorship and things like that. So we really want to, make it easy for anyone to organize their own like dialect like sessions to connect with people like you and Keith. You met because of like this seminar, you know, because I believe that we grow stronger like in numbers. So just wondering, like, do you have any ideas right now, like how we can help? Because I see this as a very valuable language.
True.
Yeah.
I think maybe we can really talk about it, and also maybe I can even share about this with Miguel. Who knows? Maybe he is also interested. Maybe we can try something. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be great. Yeah. So great. Anyone has any questions? This is your last chance before I don't know where would be the next Patuá webinar.
Hi, City here. Can you hear me?
Yes, City. Yes, we hear you.
I'm just curious to understand from Bella. You know what currently, what are most of these students in Macau? What do they learn in school? I mean, I understand that they'll learn Cantonese and probably English. Do they also learn some Portuguese or what you say, Patuá or something along that line?
Actually, schools, we have three main kinds of schools. We have schools that teaches in Chinese, Cantonese, also Mandarin, and also we have English schools, we have Portuguese schools. However, Patuá is not yet. Hopefully in one day it even as a kind of interest groups or workshops, or small workshops, who knows. One day we do hope we can at least not learn it as a really a conversational tool, but at least know about this language. Actually, I remember in last year or before the COVID situation, actually there were a group of people going around different schools. It's like a tour to talk about cultures of Macau and different kinds. And one of the topic was actually Macanese culture. And they did introduce about the Patuá language, but it's more like introducing the background. It's like the talk we are having today, but not really teaching the language. I think teaching the language, we also need to have a great curriculum, and it needs planning as well. So, well, actually, I think I answered your question. It's mainly Chinese, Portuguese, and English schools. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Bella. Thanks for sharing.
Welcome.
Great. Anyone has any other things to add? Okay, if not,
sorry, can I ask like Bella to spell out the name of, I mean, that how you shared about that handicraft, this dolls that y'all make. What is that thing called?
Well, we're called wedding dolls. Wedding.
Okay, you call it wedding dolls.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, we call it wedding dolls.
No specific names.
Well, I don't know. I don't dare say there's no specific names, but I don't know. You just caught me. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll try to find out if there's a Patuá word for it.
You said something as there was like a term that you used to describe that event or something like that just now.
Chá gordo, right?
Yeah. How do you spell? Maybe
I'll type it right.
Thanks. Thank you. I can Google.
It's chá as in tea, fat tea. Chá. Chá gordo. Gordo in Portuguese, it's the fat.
It's fat.
So it's chá gordo. It means a very rich afternoon tea. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean, I'm trying to get inspiration as well, because I'm trying to revive a festival that disappeared in Singapore for more than 50 years. And what you just shared about handicraft being one of the crux of that event, and people having different lifestyles now, leading to that maybe a decline in the how it's celebrated.
How about like this? You give me 30 seconds. I have one wedding doll here. I'll go grab it. Okay, sure. Just 1 second. Just 1 second.
Lynn, what event is that?
It's a festival that is called Qixi Festival.
Oh, Qixi, okay.
Yeah, so I think what we know of now is more of the commercial one that you hear from China. What I'm trying to revive is the one that is unique to Singapore. I mean, there's also TC Hong Kong as well, but yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
actually,
show us.
This one. You can see.
Nice.
It's
yes.
actually, because just I think a month ago, 2 months ago, I found out that there was a lady that was willing to do a workshop on these wedding dolls. So they actually use this paper. This one is from paper. So you buy a doll and you make your own design. And these kind of dolls are put on different tables so that people they are given out. People can take home as a remembrance. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Just
Are
remember.
these expensive? Are these expensive?
It's time consuming. But I think it's an interesting thing, because when you're making for me, when I was making it and learning it, it's like I would imagine the old days, the grandmothers doing that at home. And also because it incorporates I think the best wishes for example, for their daughters or for their son during the wedding. So it's a meaningful gesture, I think. You spend time to make it and then to give to the loved ones. So I think it's quite an interesting practice. Yeah.
Like, how do you see commercial in helping or hurting this tradition?
I think it's a good, I think it's actually feasible. I think it's feasible. The problem is people need to come out and teach. That's the problem. I'm sure you have, I'm interested in knowing, do you have any difficulty in really asking people to come out and teach? Are they willing to do so?
I guess mine is a different kind of scenario whereby it's a festival that has disappeared in Singapore for over 50 years. So the people who practice it now, I have to rely on people who are the next generation. So they are younger at that time when it's in the heydays. So now they are already like 80, 90 years old. So, and they're of course younger people standing up to sort of try to revive it. So I'm trying to also understand how is it in the past, and because I guess many countries also celebrate it, but I think every country has their own flavor because of their historical background and how this particular festival has spread to different places through the diaspora. So that's what I'm trying to gather. And by, I guess, if the revival is going to be done, it will have to change to become, in a sense, relevant. But of course, I want to do it in a very respectful way, that at least the stakeholders who practice it, because it is ultimately more of a religious kind of thing. I mean, a lot of practices or festivals we have are religious in the beginnings, but of course, along the way, they become secular. So while I do this project, I also try to get their inputs in terms of asking them, if I do a secular way, will you be able to accept it? So I think so far, I think somehow the stakeholders whom I interviewed, they are all agreeable in terms of how, if I sort of retain the core, the meaning of it, what is the core of it, maybe in different forms, but ultimately it's the spirit should stay on. Yeah, so that's my approach, and I don't know, hopefully I can share more in like 1-2 years.
How is it celebrated? Step by step. Yeah. Lynn, how is it celebrated in the past, TC?
I don't know. I mean, this is a Patuá class session. Am I like, I don't know. But yeah, so in the past, in Chinatown, in Singapore, every street, every lane, there'll be open houses. It's a very ground up kind of a festival where people will open up their places and let people visit. So it's like a mega arts exhibition in that sense. And much like how just now Bella was sharing about that wedding doll, putting a lot of effort into it. Similarly, so people will actually spend an entire year to make handicrafts just for that day. Yeah. So That's why I'm so when you mentioned about handicrafts, I'm like, oh yeah, let me hear more. How you are doing it?
Yeah, because actually, I've been to recently I've been to a wedding, and they had really beautiful wedding dolls, and I tried to ask the lady that did it to how about make a workshop, but I think she's a bit shy. So this is also, I think, a problem, an obstacle, because there are people that are shy and not I think there is also a kind of a criticism towards this, who has the authority to teach, you know, a culture. Even I think even the language. I'm not a Patuá speaker. How am I qualified to make this kind of flashcards and come out and talk about Patuá? I don't even speak the language fluently. But I think it's important when it comes to preservation that the support from older generations, at least, I mean, if we really need to learn, for example, like what you said, the festival has died out 50 years ago. So people need to be willing to try to teach the younger generation what they know, because if not, it's difficult. I have listened to some older generation are really generous. They would share, but there are some that will always say that youngsters are not willing to learn. They are not willing to do. But actually, if you share, you never know who is interested. The problem is you have to start sharing, right? So that it's available. It's like just now, when some mentioned that it's difficult to find Patuá to learn online and so on. People need to share. I try my best to do so, and I think the problem with certain endangered culture, language, is that people are afraid of criticism. Yeah, that's I think people need to be brave and start to do it. There are always criticism, but luckily there are also a lot of people that appreciate the culture, how we do it. So I think it's important to do it if you think it's right. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like I cannot speak Cantonese, but I did the first ever Cantonese festival in Singapore. So
Great. That's good. That's good. Really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you in terms of, like, I think for the seniors, sometimes it's also hand holding. What I realized,
true.
A lot of times we need to create the scaffolding, and a lot of times if you're doing something, I think what you're doing is also novel, and for a lot of the seniors. So sometimes it's also like seeing is believing for them, because if it's a totally new concept, if it's something not say tangible in the sense, like you cannot feel it, cannot see it, then it's a bit harder to convince them. Yeah, that's at least my 2 cents.
True.
Yeah, I think that's really true, because especially when they have never done it before, or they never been through a class that certifies, yes, you're ready to teach. I think they get a bit scared, like they don't want to teach participants like the wrong information, or they feel like, what if I can't explain it properly? Because even when we started dialect classrooms, I was asking, can you teach? And they're like, how do you teach? Because I speak this from young, like I am a fluent speaker, but how do you want me to teach? I'm like, PowerPoint? Like, can you just roughly write? I'm like, at this point, I mean, we do want to get accuracy in terms of the pronunciation, the writing, but anyone who's interested to share their information, their knowledge, you're just like so precious, you know. You're like, oh, please come and, you know, share that knowledge, just keep it going. And I think gradually, like now that we run dialect classrooms for almost 2 years, we kind of got the hang of how to teach, how to do it. Yeah, I'm sure like we are not like the best out there, but you know, always welcome any suggestions on how we can improve, because I think both the learners and the teachers are you know, learning like how do we do the festival better, how workshops, how can it be conducted better. It's just an ongoing process, but we really need to make that first step out to put ourselves out there. Yeah. Great, Cool. So Bella, do you have any last words to say? before
I
the talk?
hope this sharing was okay. I got a bit nervous at the beginning because I'm not sure that if I share it correctly or interestingly. Sometimes, you know, when I get I want to do it perfectly, but of course sometimes I get tensed. So I don't know if I really transmitted the message or if it was interesting enough for the viewers. Hope anyway, if you would like to get in touch, feel free to get in touch so that we can share more and I can learn more from you all as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So we shall wrap up our session today.
Thank you. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you so much, Bella, for taking
Thank
the
you.
time
Thank you.
out.
Thank you.
And let's speak more about how we can help with the revival of Patuá, not just in Macau, maybe the Patuá fans overseas as well. All right. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank
See you
you.
all.
See
Muito
you.
obrigado.
De nada.